I watched my son slip something dangerous into my fishing tackle box, believing years of police work had made me slow. I stayed silent, moved the package into my son's car, and waited. Moments later, flashing lights filled the driveway, and that's when everything changed. Before I tell everything, tap subscribe and comment where you're watching from so my story reaches further. I was preparing for a quiet morning on the outskirts of Redwood Springs, a small mountain town where people still waved at strangers and pretended secrets didn't exist. At 62, fishing had become the only ritual that kept my mind steady after losing my wife, Marla, 3 years earlier. Her absence lived in every corner of the house, even in the garage where I kept my tackle box, my sanctuary from the world and from my own thoughts. I was arranging lures by color and weight when my child, Caleb, stepped into the garage doorway. The light behind him created a tall silhouette, but what struck me wasn't his shape. It was the tension radiating from his posture. Shoulders stiff, jaw tight, eyes restless. The kind of stiffness I'd seen thousands of times during my 32 years as a Chicago detective. "Morning, Dad," he said, trying too hard to sound casual. "Heading to Silver Lake again?" I nodded, moving a few bobbers aside. Water should be calm today. Caleb stepped closer, pretending to admire the fishing gear. I observed every detail of his movement, the practiced smile, the forced laugh, the quick breath he drew when he thought I wasn't paying attention. His eyes kept darting not at me, not at the fishing rods leaning against the wall, but at the tackle box sitting open beside my right hand. That was the moment I knew something was wrong. Caleb never cared about fishing. Not once. And now he was hovering over my equipment, like it held the answers to his future. He crouched beside the box, pointing at a lure he'd never seen before. "This one's new, right?" I opened my mouth to answer, but his right hand moved faster than his words. A quick flick of his wrist. A small object wrapped in dark paper slipped from his jacket pocket and disappeared deep into the main compartment of the box. 10 seconds. That's all it took. 10 seconds for a grown child to cross a line that would change everything. He straightened abruptly, rubbing his hands together like he'd touched something dirty instead of something dangerous. "Well, I should let you finish. Hope you catch something big." I didn't respond. I just watched him walk away, every step heavy with something he wasn't saying. When his footsteps faded and the door shut, the garage fell into a silence that felt almost hostile. I stared at the tackle box, my pulse beating hard in my throat. Whatever he had hidden in there, he hadn't meant for me to find it right away. He wanted someone else to find it. Someone who wouldn't give me the benefit of the doubt. Someone who could ruin me. I closed the tackle box without touching the wrapped item and sat on the workbench, breathing slowly. My detective instincts weren't emotional. They were mechanical, sharpened by decades of interrogations and crime scenes. And what those instincts told me now was simple. My own child had set a trap for me. But why? I replayed the past few months in my head. Caleb's erratic moods. His sudden night drives. His constant money problems. The way he avoided my eyes whenever I asked how he was coping with Marla's death. The way his hands always trembled when opening his mail. Pieces of a puzzle I hadn't wanted to solve. This wasn't unemployment stress. This wasn't grief. This was something darker. I opened the box carefully, lifting the first tray. My fingers brushed the cold metal of the sinkers, the feathered lure I bought last spring, the spool of line I replaced last week, and then, tucked beneath a row of spoon lures, sat the black wrap package. It felt heavier than it looked. I closed my eyes before unfolding the paper, bracing myself for what I already knew would hurt. Inside the paper was a clear plastic bag filled with white powder, dense, grainy, unmistakable. I'd seen enough narcotics in evidence rooms to recognize what was before my brain had time to process the weight of the betrayal. Heroin, enough to put someone in prison for decades. Enough to destroy the last half of my life. Enough to make sure no one ever questioned my child's innocence. I sat back, my breath shaking. The garage seemed to be closing in on me, walls creeping inward like a slow trap. For 30 years, I'd chased criminals who had drugs in lunchboxes, dashboards, hollowed-out books. But never once did I think I'd open my own tackle box and find my child's desperation staring back at me. My first thought wasn't anger. It was disbelief. How had I missed it? How had a father with a lifetime of training failed to see the darkness growing inside his own child? Then the disbelief evaporated, replaced with something colder, harder. Caleb had planted this for a reason. And the only time someone plants drugs on another person is when they're desperate enough to sacrifice someone else to save themselves. Finally, the truth settled in with painful clarity. My child was planning to destroy me. And if I didn't act fast, the next knock on my door would come from officers who wouldn't care about my past, my service, or my innocence. I wrapped the heroin back in the paper. Hands steady now. Not calm, steady. The difference mattered. Calm was emotional. Steady was tactical. I wasn't just a father anymore. I was a man preparing for a battle I never asked for. And the person on the other side of that battle was my own flesh and blood. I stayed in the garage for a long time, staring at the wrapped heroin as if it might explain itself. But nothing about the situation made sense. Not the timing, not the execution, not the sheer boldness of it. Caleb wasn't careless. He was frightened. And frightened people make dangerous choices. But planting narcotics on his own father? That wasn't fear. That was strategy. I carefully placed the drugs back into the tissue, folded it into a tight square, and slid it beneath the workbench while I sorted my thoughts. 32 years as a detective had taught me that before reacting, you look at motive, opportunity, and consequence. Those three things solve every crime. What was Caleb's motive? What was he running from? Or toward? I needed answers, and his strange behavior the night before suddenly made much more sense. Yesterday evening, while we sat at the dining table in our quiet house in Redwood Springs, Caleb barely touched his plate. His shoulders shook every so often, like his nerves were firing on their own. His hands trembled as he lifted his glass, and I noticed a bruise on his left wrist, deep, purple, and fresh. "Are you feeling all right?" I asked, watching him poke a chicken he had no intention of eating. He nodded, but his eyes stayed fixed on his plate. "Just tired." "Tired doesn't make your hands shake," I said gently. He flinched, like the words hit a bruise I couldn't see. Silence filled the room until he finally whispered, "Dad, I need to tell you something." I recognized that tone instantly. The quiet, trembling voice of a man who had run out of options. "What is it, Caleb?" He swallowed hard. "I need money. 50,000. The number hadn't shocked me at first. He'd asked for money before, though never this much. But the desperation in his voice, almost frantic, that was new. "Caleb, I don't have that kind of money lying around." "What's going on? Who's pressuring you?" He wouldn't meet my eyes. "It doesn't matter. I just need it." "It matters to me," I insisted. "You're my child. I'm not handing over that amount without answers." The moment I said no, something inside him changed. A flicker of something. Anger? Panic? Resentment? Passed across his face so quickly I almost doubted I saw it. He pushed back from the table abruptly. "You don't understand anything, Dad. Forget I asked." Before I could respond, he stormed upstairs and slammed his bedroom door. I sat alone at the table, listening to the muffled sound of pacing above me, the rhythmic thud of footsteps crossing back and forth like a metronome of panic. Now, standing in the garage 12 hours later, those frantic steps made perfect sense. Caleb wasn't just in trouble. He was cornered, and cornered people don't think. They react. I needed to know exactly how bad things were. So I left the garage and walked back inside the house, moving through the quiet hallway toward the staircase. Halfway up, I paused. Caleb's bedroom door was slightly ajar, and his voice drifted toward me, low, pleading, trembling. "No, Marco, please, just give me until Sunday. My father will have the money by then. I promise you." My hand tightened around the banister. "Marco? Who was he calling?" I said, "I'll get it," Caleb continued, voice cracking. "He won't fight me on it again. I'll make sure of it." Then, after a pause, "No, don't send anyone here. Please. I'm handling it." The conversation ended abruptly, followed by another call. "Elena, I know the loan is overdue. I'm getting the funds this weekend. Don't start foreclosure. Please. I just need a little more time." "Foreclosure? Loan?" My stomach twisted as puzzle pieces clicked into place. Caleb wasn't just in debt. He was drowning in it. Whatever trouble he'd gotten into, it was much bigger than money, bigger than guilt, bigger than addiction. He wasn't asking for help anymore. He was preparing for survival, at my expense. I stepped back before Caleb could sense I was nearby. The conversation was enough for now. I needed clarity, not confrontation. When Caleb finally left the house for what he claimed was a job interview, I waited until his car disappeared down the street. Then I walked into his room. The smell hit me first, a mix of sweat, stale anxiety, and something chemical. Papers lay scattered across the desk and floor, as if he tried cleaning up but lost it while halfway through. I began scanning. Bank statements, withdrawals, cash advances from high-interest credit cards, receipts from Lucky Star Casino. But what made my breath catch was a loan contract from someone named Elena Rivas, a private lender known in certain circles as a legal shark with illegal methods. The document claimed my house, my home of 30 years, as collateral. My name was signed at the bottom, except I had never touched the document. Caleb had forged my signature to secure an $85,000 loan he had already burned through. My pulse pounded, each beat a sharp reminder that this situation was far beyond family conflict. This was criminal, professional-level deception, forged paperwork, organized lenders, violent creditors. And Caleb had dragged me into all of it. Worse, he had decided that removing me was the only way he could escape the consequences. I took photos of everything: statements, receipts, loan papers, a torn notepad scribbled with more names and numbers. Then I carefully returned every item exactly where I found it. No need to tip him off. Downstairs, my phone buzzed. A text from Caleb. Interview went great. Should hear back Monday. Thanks for believing in me, Dad. The lie might have stung once. Not now. Now it only confirmed what I already knew. My child was spiraling into darkness, and he was willing to sacrifice me to save himself. I stepped back into the garage, opened a small compartment where the heroin had been hidden, and stared at the empty space. That tackle box had been a symbol of peace once. Now it was stained with betrayal. I felt something shift inside me. Not anger, not grief, but something colder and sharper. A clarity I hadn't felt since my years interrogating criminals who looked me in the eye and lied without blinking. Caleb thought he had me cornered, but he'd forgotten who raised him. He'd forgotten what 30 years of dealing with liars, traffickers, and manipulators had taught me. If he wanted to destroy me, he was about to discover that I wasn't nearly as easy to break as he believed. I returned to the garage and stared at my tackle box, its innocence long gone. The thing had been with me for decades. Lake Windermere trips with Marla, afternoons teaching Caleb how to bait hooks, mornings escaping the noise of life. Now it was part of a trap my own child had set, a trap I refused to walk into. I lifted the heroin carefully, feeling its weight, the way the bag shifted like fine sand inside the plastic. The evidence of Caleb's choice. The evidence of how far he had fallen. But the evidence would not be staying in my possession. Not if I intended to stay free. My mind sharpened the way it used to during active cases. When criminals thought they were smarter than procedure, they always underestimated one thing: timing. The moment they made a move, I countered it before they could form the next thought. Caleb believed his scheme would unfold perfectly. He would make the anonymous call, reporting me. Officers would storm the house, search the box, find the drugs, arrest me, and remove me from the equation. With me gone, he'd gain access to my assets, resolve his debts, and slip back into the shadows of his bad decisions. It was a clean plan. Clean, except for one thing. I saw him plant the drugs. And I had 30 years of experience dismantling criminal strategies. I wrapped the heroin again, this time tighter, making the package compact enough to move without tearing. Then I turned toward the doorway where Caleb left his car keys hanging on a hook every evening. Even after all the lies, he was still a creature of habit. His 10-year-old sedan sat in the driveway, silver, rust on a fender, trunk slightly dented. A car no one looked at twice. A car perfect for hiding something no one was meant to find. I walked outside, the cool air biting at my face as the sun dipped lower. The neighborhood was quiet, families inside eating dinner, lights turning on one by one. A peaceful street. A normal street. No one looking. No one knowing that on the same sidewalk, a father was preparing to undo his child's plan to destroy him. I unlocked the trunk and lifted it. The hinges creaked softly. Inside were jumper cables, a stained blanket, an old gym bag, the scent of stale coffee lingering. I moved the gym bag aside and placed the wrapped heroin deep near the wheel well, far enough to be discovered during a proper search, close enough that it wouldn't shift around. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. Caleb had placed poison in my life. Now the poison sat in his car. I closed the trunk gently, letting the click echo through the silent driveway. Inside, I returned the keys exactly where they hung before. If Caleb noticed even one thing out of place, everything would unravel. I cleaned the tackle box thoroughly, removing any residue his fingerprints might have left and reorganizing the contents exactly as I kept them for years. Neat, orderly, predictable. A box of peace once more. I sat in the living room afterward, fishing magazine open in my lap, pretending to read. But I listened. Every sound in the house. Every creak of the floorboards. Every whisper of the wind through the vent. Waiting. Caleb returned home 2 hours later. The door opened softly, like he didn't want to disturb the balance of the space he had already violated. "Dad!" His voice held false warmth. "I'm back." I looked up slowly, controlling my breath. "How was the interview?" He smiled too easily. "Really good. I think I've got a real shot." He wasn't even trying to hide the lie. "That's great," I replied. He relaxed, thinking he'd fooled me. But his eyes flicked toward the garage with a quickness he couldn't hide. Checking, confirming, making sure the drugs were still there. He was waiting for his moment. He thought he had time. He thought everything was still moving according to his plan. Little did he know, I was already 10 steps ahead. Caleb went upstairs soon after. His footsteps were lighter than usual, almost excited. When his bedroom door closed, I heard what I'd expected, his voice low, controlled, but with the underlying tremor of desperation. "Yes, it's done," he whispered. "I saw him using the tackle box earlier. They'll find everything." My breathing slowed. He was calling the police already. "They're sending a team tonight," he continued. "You'll get your money by tomorrow. I swear." My chest tightened, not from fear, but from the crushing weight of what he'd become. He wasn't nervous now. He wasn't conflicted. He wasn't second-guessing. He was relieved. Relieved that his father, the man who raised him, would be taken away in handcuffs while he salvaged his own mess. He ended the call with a shaky sigh. Minutes later, he made another call. "Elena, yes, the payment will be made. I'll bring it after everything's handled." No, he has no idea. More lies. More promises built on the destruction of the only person who ever stood between him and the world. Then a third call. "Marco, it's happening tonight. You're safe. I told you I'd handle it." No, Dad won't be in the picture anymore. It wasn't what he said that broke something inside me. It was the tone. Cold, resolute, almost proud. A child who once clung to my shirt when lightning scared him now spoke about my removal, as if it were just another chore to check off a list. A quiet man at a desk. A father doing everything right. That's who I was. But to Caleb, I was an obstacle. At 9:47 p.m., I saw the glow of headlights through the living room curtains. They arrived without sirens, just steady beams cutting across the driveway. 3 marked police SUVs and 1 unmarked sedan. Caleb came down the stairs moments later, face arranged into a mask of startled confusion, a performance he'd rehearsed in his head. "Dad, the police, what's going on?" His voice trembled in all the right places. I stood slowly. My knees cracked, but I kept my composure. "Let's find out." Caleb followed close behind, ready to play the victim, ready to watch the next phase of his plan unfold, ready for the scene he had engineered. I opened the door. Detective Lila Moreno, an old colleague from my Chicago days, stood on the porch, flanked by 2 DEA agents. "Thomas," she said softly, "we need to speak with you." Behind her, officers were already moving to the perimeter. Caleb stepped forward, eyebrows lifted, voice sweetened. "Detective, Is my dad in some kind of trouble? He was convincing, but he wasn't prepared for what came next. Not even close. Detective Moreno's expression shifted sharply when Caleb spoke, her eyebrows tightening as she studied him closely. Years ago, when we worked cases together in Chicago, that look meant one thing. She already suspected something. She stepped inside with controlled authority, her badge glinting under the porch light. Thomas, we receive a report of narcotics trafficking from this address. We have a warrant to search your property, including your garage and personal effects. I nodded slowly, letting calm settle over me like armor. Of course, Lila. Do what you need to do. Caleb stood just behind me, face arranged with perfect imitation of concern. Narcotics? That doesn't make sense. My father would never. He barely even drinks. This must be some mistake. Detective Moreno looked at him again, assessing, reading him. She always had an instinct for liars, even when they were good at pretending. Caleb shifted his weight too quickly, eyes darting the garage like a compass pulled toward magnetic truth. Let's begin with the garage, the lead DA agent said. I gestured toward the door. Be my guest. Caleb followed close behind, careful to maintain the facade of supportive, worried family member. But every inch of his posture screamed anticipation. He expected victory. Expected the agents to find exactly what he had placed there. Expected his perfect plan to unfold step by step. We walked into the garage, the cool air hitting us with a familiar scent of oil and old paint. My tackle box sat exactly where it always sat. On the workbench, orderly, harmless, untouched since I cleaned it earlier. There, Caleb offered quickly, almost too quickly. That's where he keeps all his fishing stuff. I thought I saw something earlier. Detective Moreno raised one eyebrow. You thought you saw something? Caleb swallowed. Yes, something wrapped in black paper. There it was, his slip, nervousness disguised as helpfulness. The agent approached the tackle box, photographed it, dusted the clasp lightly, then opened it with gloved hands. Caleb leaned forward, tension rising through his posture like smoke. The agent lifted each tray methodically, examining lures, hooks, weights, and a perfectly clean bottom compartment. Then he paused, not because he found anything, but because he didn't. Nothing here, the agent said flatly. Caleb blinked, the color draining from his face. What? No, check again. He had something in there this morning. Detective Moreno's gaze sharpened. You seem awfully certain about the exact location of the alleged narcotics. Caleb's voice cracked. I'm just trying to help. But the truth was unraveling him like thread pulled from cheap fabric. The agent closed the box. No controlled substances found. Should we continue the search? Detective Moreno tapped her pen against her notebook thoughtfully. No, I think we should search something else. Her eyes landed directly on Caleb. Your vehicle. Caleb froze, breath hitching audibly. My car? Why? I'm the one who reported this. That's precisely why, she said calmly. Individuals who file false reports often attempt to redirect suspicion. His jaw moved without sound, like he physically couldn't form words. But agents were already walking toward his car. This is ridiculous, Caleb sputtered, following them. I'm telling you, you're wasting time. The trunk opened. The gym bag shifted, and the black wrap package was lifted into view. The agent held the clear plastic baggie up to the trunk light, white powder inside shimmering faintly. Caleb's panic exploded. That's not mine. My father planted that. He's trying to set me up. Detective Moreno crossed her arms. Why would your father plant narcotics inside your car the same day you call us to search his tackle box? Caleb's mouth opened, but no answer came. He had no story prepared for this moment. He'd planned every detail of my downfall, but none of his own. The agent spoke firmly. Caleb Miller, you are under arrest for possession of heroin with intent to distribute and for filing a false police report. Handcuffs clicked around his wrists. He twisted toward me, eyes blazing with hatred and disbelief. You did this. You moved it. You're the one who should be in cuffs. I met his stare, steady as stone. I have no idea what you're talking about. Detective Moreno spoke next, her tone cool but tinged with disappointment. Caleb, you made multiple phone calls tonight. The DEA obtained recordings. You openly discussed destroying your father to solve your debt problems. Caleb's face crumpled, fury collapsing into dread. You recorded? No, she replied. Your lenders did. And none of them are loyal to someone who owes them money. Caleb's knees buckled slightly as agents lifted him upright and guided him toward a patrol car. His voice cracked with raw desperation. Dad, please. Dad, say something. Don't let them take me. The sound cut deeper than the betrayal ever could, but compassion had limits. And mine had been burned through completely. He was placed in the back of the cruiser, head down, shoulders shaking. Not with remorse, but with rage and terror. As lights flashed across the driveway, Detective Moreno stood beside me. I'm sorry, Thomas, she said quietly. I exhaled slowly. I knew this job would show me the worst of strangers. Never thought it would show me the worst of my own child. She closed her notebook. Sometimes the people closest to us are the most dangerous. The cruiser pulled away. I watched until the taillights disappeared into the night. The street fell silent. But inside me, everything was louder than ever. Grief, relief, anger, and a cold understanding that life would never return to what it had been. The child I raised was gone. And the person left behind was a stranger who nearly ended my life. That night felt longer than any shift I had worked as a Chicago detective. After Caleb was taken into custody, Detective Moreno stayed behind to complete paperwork and secure evidence. When she finally left, the house felt hollow, as if every corner echoed with the absence of who Caleb used to be. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was the kind that made a father question every choice made across decades. I sat in the living room with the old floor lamp dimmed low, hands clasped together, elbows on my knees. The chair across from me still carried an indentation from where Caleb used to sit with popcorn, watching movies with Sarah and me on Friday nights. That chair had held a laughing boy, then a moody teenager, then a broken adult pretending to hold himself together. Now it held nothing but an imprint and a memory. Eventually, exhaustion won. I dozed off in the living room, but it wasn't restful. The dreams came sharp, Sarah's voice whispering warnings, Caleb as a child tugging on my arm asking if we could go fishing, a grown man's voice called from the back of a police cruiser. Morning sunlight spilled across the carpet, dragging me back into reality. The house felt heavier now. Something inside it had shifted permanently. Around 9 a.m., my phone buzzed. The name on the caller ID made my stomach sink. County jail intake. I almost let it go to voicemail. But some part of me, the part still clinging to the fragments of a father's heart, answered. Mr. Walker, the guard said, your son is requesting to speak with you. You may refuse. There was a long silence as I weighed the decision. Put him through. A click, a static buzz, then a shaky breath on the other end. Dad, please answer. I'm here, Caleb. His voice cracked immediately. Dad, I'm sorry. Please, you gotta get me out. You know I can't be in here. These people, they're not like the drunks you used to arrest. Please, Dad, I'm begging you. The desperation was real. But so was the memory of hearing him calmly plan to destroy me less than 24 hours earlier. Caleb, I said quietly, you tried to frame your father for drug trafficking. You planted narcotics in my tackle box. You forged documents against my house. You lied to the authorities. And you would have let me rot in prison to save yourself. No, that's not, Dad, I was scared. I didn't think straight. Please, you raised me better than this. I made mistakes. Mistakes are forgetting to pay a bill. Mistakes are losing a job. What you did was deliberate. His breath hitched into sobs. Please, Dad, I have nothing left. No one else. You're all I have. I closed my eyes tightly, wrestling with the hollow ache inside me. I had once promised Sarah I would never abandon our child. But Sarah had also told me once, in quieter moments, that unconditional love shouldn't mean self-destruction. Caleb, I finally said, I'll hire you a lawyer. You'll have a fair trial. But I will not bail you out. His sobbing stopped instantly, and the voice that replaced it wasn't desperate. It was cold. "Fine," he said. "Enjoy your life. Because when I get out, you'll regret this." The call ended before I could respond. I set the phone on the table, feeling the weight of those final words. Threat or despair? Maybe both. But the line had been drawn now. Whatever bond existed between father and son had been severed not by anger, but by necessity. Hours later, I received a call from a federal prosecutor. The narcotics charge wasn't the only issue. Caleb's forged documents, extortion attempts, and connections to known traffickers meant multiple charges were stacking. And there was something else. "Mr. Walker," the prosecutor said, "we located audio evidence from a lender connected to your son. Conversations documented intent to fraudulently transfer real estate and implicate you. This significantly supports your innocence." I thanked the prosecutor, hung up, and stared at the kitchen wall until the clock ticked past noon. The truth was clear. This wasn't going away. My home, my reputation, my future. They were all tangled in Caleb's downfall. I had to protect what was left. I called an attorney, Mr. Beach, a man I once testified alongside in court. After explaining the situation, he sighed deeply. "Thomas, I wish I could say this is unusual, but addiction and desperation turn people into versions of themselves that no parent wants to imagine. Can the house be protected?" I asked. "Yes," he said. "Given the evidence, we can file a petition to void all documents Caleb forged. It will take some time, but legally, he never had the right to leverage your home." Relief washed over me. A small victory. But the victory fell hollow, like saving a sinking boat after the storm had already torn apart. That evening, I sat on the back porch with a cup of coffee. The yard behind the house stretched out with old oak trees Sarah had loved, their branches swaying in the evening breeze. I used to picture Caleb playing here with his future kid someday. Those dreams felt foolish now. Fantasies of a father who thought love could protect someone from their own darkness. My neighbor, Mrs. Curran, peeked over the fence. "I saw police cars last night," she said tentatively. "Is everything all right?" "Everything is under control," I replied. Her eyes softened. "You deserve peace, Thomas. You've been through enough." Peace. The word felt foreign now. After she left, I sat outside until moon rose. I found myself clutching my fishing line, running the nylon thread through my fingers, grounding myself in the one thing that still felt real. This house had become a battleground. Memories of Sarah and Caleb were tangled now with betrayal, panic, fear, and the raw realization that sometimes the greatest threat doesn't come from strangers. It comes from family. By the end of the week, federal agents had solidified the case. Marco, the trafficker Caleb owed money to, had been found, and the testimony provided by lenders and contacts Caleb had communicated with painted a full picture of his descent into criminal desperation. Then came the preliminary hearing. I sat in the courtroom. Caleb entered wearing a county jumpsuit, escorted by 2 officers. He wouldn't look at me, not at first, but when he finally did, the bitterness in his eyes was unmistakable. His lawyer advised him to plead for leniency, given cooperation. But Caleb wasn't thinking logically. He was thinking emotionally. The judge asked, "Mr. Walker, do you understand the charges against you?" Caleb glared directly at me before speaking. "Yes, Your Honor, and I want to say something." His lawyer tried to stop him, but Caleb stepped forward anyway. "My father is the reason I ended up here," he said angrily. "If he actually supported me when I needed him, if he hadn't abandoned me after my mother died, none of this would have happened." The courtroom murmured. The prosecutor rose immediately. "Your Honor, the state has documented proof of Mr. Walker's premeditated plan to frame his father, including multiple recorded conversations indicating clear intent." Caleb's jaw twitched, but he kept his eyes locked on me. "I had no choice," he snapped. "I was drowning, and my father just watched. I felt something break inside me. Not with anger, but with the dawning realization that Caleb truly believed his survival should come at my expense." The judge raised a hand. "Enough. This matter will proceed with full review of evidence. Bail is denied." Caleb's eyes widened, fury igniting, As he was escorted out, he twisted his head toward me and hissed, "This isn't over." But deep down, I knew it was. The version of Caleb I raised, the child who loved fishing trips, bedtime stories, and his mother's cooking, that child was long gone. That night, when I got home, I looked around the house and saw shadows of memories everywhere. And that was when I made a decision I never thought I'd make. I pulled out boxes. I opened drawers. I walked through the rooms Sarah once decorated with such warmth. It was time to leave this place. Not because I feared Caleb, but because staying meant living in a house where innocence had died twice. First with Sarah's passing, then with Caleb's betrayal. I wasn't running away. I was starting over. And for the first time in years, that thought didn't terrify me. It soothed me. The decision to leave the house wasn't impulsive. It grew slowly, like a bruise spreading beneath the skin. Each room I stepped into carried memories that no longer comforted. Memories that weighed me down like wet cement. The place Sarah once filled with laughter had become a monument to loss, to betrayal, to the slow unraveling of what I once believed family meant. The next morning, I contacted a realtor. A young professional named Andrea visited by noon. She carried an iPad, a polite smile, and eyes that immediately softened when I explained I was downsizing after difficult family circumstances. She walked through the house quietly, respectful of the gravity that still lingered in the walls. "Mr. Walker," she finally said, "this home will sell quickly. The neighborhood is desirable and the property is well maintained. You'll get strong offers." Her words landed strangely. Once, I would have felt pride. Now, I felt only closure. After signing brokerage papers, I spent the afternoon packing. The silence in the house followed me like a shadow. Every item I picked up seemed to vibrate with memory. Caleb's childhood baseball glove, Sarah's favorite scarf, a ceramic mug Caleb made during a school art project. Some relics I wrapped carefully. Others I placed in a donation box without hesitation. The act was oddly cleansing, like wringing out a soaked cloth and watching dirty water disappear. While sorting through Sarah's belongings, I found an old letter tucked between photo albums, a letter written in her handwriting. My heart trembled as I opened it. It wasn't addressed to anyone specifically, but the content was unmistakably meant for me. "Thomas, if anything ever divides our family, follow the truth, even if it hurts. Love doesn't mean blind loyalty. Love means doing what protects the soul. If our child ever loses a path, help, but do not sacrifice yourself. I trust your judgment more than you trust your own." I read the letter twice, then a third time. It felt as if Sarah had spoken through time, giving permission I desperately needed. That night, I slept easier. 2 days later, the house went on the market. Within 48 hours, I had 3 offers. By the end of the week, I accepted one, a young couple with a baby on the way. A new family would build something here, something untainted, something hopeful. As for me, I found a modest apartment in a quiet neighborhood of Boulder. The balcony overlooked the foothills, and the morning light washed over everything like a promise that life could still bloom after seasons of ruin. The move took place just 2 days after closing escrow. I kept only what mattered: Sarah's photographs, my fishing gear, a few books, and the old recliner that had carried me through nights of grief and contemplation. Everything else belonged to the past. The first morning in Boulder, I sat with a cup of black coffee and breathed deeply. No memories haunted these walls. No anger. No fear. Just possibility. But Caleb was never far from my thoughts. His legal process continued. A month later, a letter arrived, not from Caleb directly, but from his attorney. The attorney requested insight regarding Caleb's upbringing, mental health, and family dynamics to assist with sentencing mitigation. I read the letter several times before responding. The truth was all I had left to give. I wrote, "Caleb was raised in a loving environment with stability, support, and guidance. The addiction he fell into was not caused by lack of family care. The criminal actions were deliberate and calculated. I love my child, but I cannot excuse choices that harmed others and nearly destroyed me." It was the hardest letter I ever wrote. But honesty mattered now more than ever. The sentencing hearing arrived 2 weeks later. I wasn't required to attend, but something inside urged me to go. Not for Caleb's sake, not entirely. I needed closure. I needed to see the ending before beginning the next chapter. The courtroom felt strangely familiar, with its wooden benches, dusty air, and worn carpet. I had been in countless courtrooms during my detective years, but never as a father watching an adult child stand trial for attempting to dismantle his parents' life. Caleb entered wearing the same orange jumpsuit I had seen weeks earlier. His shoulders slumped now, eyes hollowed by nights in custody. The arrogance that once spilled from every gesture was dimmed, but not gone. He glanced at me only once, a flicker of something unreadable crossing his face. Anger? Shame? Desperation? Even after everything, I couldn't decipher fully. The judge reviewed the charges: possession of narcotics with intent to distribute, attempted fraud, falsification of legal documents, and filing a false police report. The evidence was overwhelming. Witness testimonies from lenders, audio recordings of past conversations, and the recovered narcotics found in Caleb's vehicle formed a case that even the most skilled defense attorney couldn't unravel. Caleb's attorney argued for leniency, citing addiction, grief over losing his mother, and impaired judgment. The judge listened. But the judge had also listened to recordings. "Mr. Walker," the judge said at last, "the court acknowledges the pain you've experienced and the deep wounds created by addiction. However, the criminal choices were conscious. The harm inflicted was severe. You attempted to frame your father, exposing him to federal charges and devastation. You manipulated multiple individuals and placed others at risk." Caleb's jaw tightened. His eyes darted toward me with a flash of something sharp. The judge continued, voice steady. "This court cannot overlook intent. Therefore, you are sentenced to 7 years in federal custody, with eligibility for rehabilitation programs." 7 years. The number struck like a hammer blow, not out of shock, but out of finality. Caleb exhaled angrily, muttering something to the bailiff. As he was escorted out of the courtroom, he looked at me once more. The gaze wasn't a plea. It was a promise of resentment. But resentment no longer had power over me. In the days that followed, I immersed myself in my new life. The Boulder apartment became a sanctuary. I took long morning walks along the foothills. I joined a local fishing group that met weekly at nearby lakes. I reconnected with old friends who welcomed me warmly. I even shared coffee with a retired schoolteacher who lived down the hall and baked muffins that filled the hallway with the scent of blueberries. Slowly, the world opened again. One afternoon, while cleaning my fishing gear, I discovered that my hands no longer trembled when touching the tackle box. The once tainted object had returned to its rightful purpose. I felt something shift inside, a quiet release. A month later, a letter arrived from Caleb. This time, the handwriting was unmistakably his. I hesitated before opening it, but eventually unfolded the page. "Dad, I know you won't forgive me, but I want to explain. I wasn't trying to hurt you. I was trying to survive. I know that's not an excuse. I know I cross lines no child should cross. Prison is terrifying. I don't know who I'm becoming here. I don't expect anything from you. I just needed to write something to someone who knew me before everything fell apart." The letter wasn't an apology. It wasn't healing. But it was a message from someone who no longer pretended to be blameless. I wrote back only one line. "I hope you use this time to rebuild the parts of yourself you lost." After mailing the letter, I stepped outside onto my balcony. The evening sun painted the mountains gold, casting long shadows across the valley. I closed my eyes and felt the breeze move through me gently, as if carrying away pieces of the past that no longer served my life. Sarah's words returned to me, not as sorrow but as strength. "Follow the truth, even if it hurts." I had followed the truth, and though it cost me the relationship with the child I raised, it saved the man I had become. Weeks flowed into months. Seasons shifted. I adapted to a quieter rhythm, one free from turmoil, filled with small joys and new beginnings. The pain didn't disappear, but it softened, and in its place came something unexpected. Clarity. I understood now that survival wasn't selfishness. It was wisdom. Some family bonds hold you together. Others hold you hostage. And the greatest act of love for oneself, and sometimes even for the one who betrays you, is refusing to be destroyed in the name of loyalty. That truth became my compass. And with it, I stepped into the rest of my life with steadier feet, clearer eyes, and a heart finally free from the burden of saving someone who didn't want to be saved. Before you go, share how far my story reached you, and subscribe so more people can hear these life-changing journeys. Your voice keeps these stories alive. Thank you for being here.